This is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend D.G. Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
I'm Kelly Thompson, and you're listening to Capes and Lunatics.
Hello, kids. Welcome back to another episode of Comic Capers. I am Phil, and joining me for the last week of September, it is...
I am Will. Hey, everyone.
All right. So this time I'm going to discuss another one of Will's choices, Global Frequency, specifically issue 12. But I want you to talk about the series as a whole. Why did you pick this one? What do you love so much about this?
I will get into that, but what number of comic capers are we?
Oh, sorry, I didn't put the thing up. 126.
126.
Yes.
Awesome. So, when, during this time, I wrote my dissertation. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on Warren Ellis. The books that I looked at 3 of his really long form works and 3 of his shorter, limited series. So, from Stormwatch the Authority was something that was really interesting to me from kind of that standpoint. Planetary. I think Planetary is just awesome. And then Transmetropolitan. So those are the big works. Stormwatch and the Authority is like 40 plus issues. Mm-hmm. Transmetropolitan ran 60, I think. And then Planetary ran 26. So
this was the last issue, right? Issue 12?
Yeah, issue 12 was the final issue of Global Frequency. So the other thing, I focused on some shorter works. So Global Frequency, it was 12 issues. Ocean was 6 issues. And then Orbiter, which was a graphic novel with he and Colleen Doran. So I really, really studied those works. I also included, because I'm a geek, a giant checklist of his work that he'd done up to that point. But the thing I like about Global Frequency is, so with his work, there's this thin veneer of cynicism, that it's the world is bad, people are bad, and everything. But just underneath that, there's this real hope, I think, and that's what really appealed to me as a reader, and as someone who's studied it. And Global Frequency, the reason I think that appealed to me is you basically have. So Miranda Zero runs the Global Frequency. It's a worldwide rescue organization. That's what they do. The only thing sci-fi is they had satellite phones. Okay. In 2002, that was probably a big deal. Today, I could get one off Amazon, right?
Yeah.
But what the Global Frequency does is there's 1,001 members on the Global Frequency across the world. And what they try to do is save people from the landmines that are still in the dirt from the previous century. The first issue is called Bombhead, I think. There was a Soviet experiment where they were going to they teleported a nuclear weapon through a proto-superhuman who had the ability to teleport stuff, and they sent him to San Francisco. Well, obviously they never detonated that, but the old tech failed, and now he's getting headache. The stuff that was never meant to be in his head for 20 years, 30 years, right? So there's a nuke coming, and they have to save San Francisco from getting bombed, and it's a really good issue. There's an element of also kind of an X-Files. And I'm saying something that probably most people don't even, Yes, the X-Files was 30 years ago at this point, right? 30 years ago? Maybe? Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, they had 2 movies, a revival a few years ago.
Well, that's true. Yeah. There's an element of the X-Files to it, too, because in one issue they go to this Nordic town where all of the people have apparently had this communal experience because of like low frequency sounds or something, and they have to piece it out and figure out what's going on. They deal with a cult. And some of the issues are really violent. Some of them not. One of my favorite issues is called The Run. These people are going to release a nerve gas in the eye of London. The big thing.
Yeah.
And the only person that's there and close is a parkour runner. Now, this is 2002. I had no idea what parkour was, so I was like, this is really cool, and she's able to save the day, and lots of people don't die. But it's just such there's this, besides there being hope, in that thin veneer of cynicism, there's also this anger that we have to deal with all this BS and the second to last page, there's a speech by the astronaut. We'll get to that. But I dearly, dearly love that speech. It's really, we'll talk about it in a minute. But there's this anger that, we're being forced to deal with this crap that a bunch of, old white guys set up, 40 or 50 years ago, that it makes it's stupid, and yet we're here having to deal with this crap, and people are dying, and, people are being injured, and it's hopeful, but there is that subtext of anger there, which I appeals to me, I guess, because, why are we having to deal with all this crap,
Do any of these issues get into them setting up the network, or is it just that, the whole series, it's just everything's up and running already? And
yeah, everything's up and running. It's all of the issues are standalone, right? So it's structured kind of like a TV series in that, here's an episode, so you don't need to see. Now, we get a couple of characters that appeared previously in the series besides Miranda, Zero, and Aleph, but it's really, there's not much. You don't have to read the first issue to know what's going on. I mean, that's the whole point. They're all kind of standalone issues. One issue, Miranda Zero gets kidnapped. And the whole issue is Aleph trying to find her and get somebody there to rescue her before she's killed, right? And it's really good. And the other cool thing is about this series is that Ellis works with a different artist every issue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first issue is Gary Leach. He maybe did this thing called Miracle Man that maybe some people heard about. This issue that we're going to talk about, issue 12, is by Gene Ha, who is an excellent artist. To take it back to the last episode, he was also the artist on Top 10 for Alan Moore's, ABC Comics.
Oh, nice.
And I think the series is really, really strong. But again, there's this really defiant and angry hope on those, the next to last, the final speech that the astronaut gives before he, saves everybody, which really, really appeals to me. Maybe I'm angry and hopeful too. I don't know, but it was on. I think we talked about this last time. When I went on Ray's show, Into the Night.
Yeah.
The Night podcast.
Oh, the top 10 your that
so what I did
book, yeah.
So what I did was, it's not very scientific, but I basically sit down. I said, what stories do I remember, that stand out to me? And I knew there was going to be a quasar on it, and I knew that one was going to win because that's me. But I just started writing them down, and this is one of those stories that mattered to me, and like the Tom Strong story, number 3, that we talked about last time, mattered to me. So and then it was. Once I had, 20, I think I got a list of about 20. I was like, okay, what order do I put these in? Which one means more to me than the other? So and that was kind of a hard thing to do because, these stories, I'm sure it's the same for these stories matter to us for different reasons.
Yeah.
So, ultimately I put that list together, and then when this came along, like, hey, let's do the Tom Strong and let's do Global Frequency 12. So that's how we got here.
But yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, again, I mean, I only read the one issue, the last issue, but it almost seems like a cross between like a police procedural show and like a G.I. Joe comic in the best way. Mm-hmm. And like, now that you mentioned like a different artist on each issue, it's almost like it is like a TV show where like you bring in a different director every time, and it's just like,
yeah. And almost a different cast. The only constant is Miranda Zero and, Aleph, basically. So
it's almost like Quantum Leap. You got your two lead characters. Yeah. Everyone else changes every episode.
Exactly. So and that's now it is definitely not for I think when it was released under Wildstorm at the time, but it was not for younger readers. There's lots of blood and guts, and it gets a little bit sweary at times. But I think when it was collected under the Vertigo banner, and then it was 2 6-issue trades, and then I think maybe about 10 years ago, all 12 issues were collected into a hardcover, which I don't think I have. Gotta put that on the list.
Because only 12 issues. That'd be a nice little collection to have. I mean, it's not that...
Exactly, yeah. But I highly recommend reading the entire series. But again, this issue is the one that stands out to me, the most. I mean, I remember the run issue. I think that was number 6. But it's good. There's what Global Frequency does too is I think it's it states up front we're dealing with the landmines from the last century. Mm-hmm. But it's really, at its core, it's going after the military-industrial complex. Look at the state of the world because look at what we have to deal with because all of these people are making things to kill other people just so that they can have a profit, right? So it's very critical of the military-industrial complex, which again appeals to me as well. So but I guess we can kind of set the stakes with issue 12, right? Mm-hmm. So it begins with Aleph, who's now she's the computer hacker. She's the central information hub of the Global Frequency organization, right? Mm-hmm. She gets pinged that information has been sent up to some dark satellites. And they're like, "What's going on?" The Pentagon mainframe sent some stuff up. Well, this is the technology has broken. It was not meant to be sent. And I really like how, over the next several pages, we get to find out, well, what the heck's going on? Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're finding out. They pull in lots of people. They pull in, intelligence people. They pull in other hackers. They pull in, people that deal with encryption to figure out, what's going on. And by the time they figure it out, it's Operation, let's see, it's called Dieback. All right. What that means is that originally somebody in the U.S. government thought that not all Americans needed to survive for America to survive.
Yeah.
And it was designed to reduce the population of America by 80%. So kill 80% of the people in America. And it does this, which I think is genius, because, you don't want to use nukes because that leaves all that messy radiation around, right?
Yeah.
So what you do is you load up some carbon spikes and you just throw them. It's a kinetic harpoon. The name of this issue is Harpoon. And you just throw those from orbit down to the Earth. And they get superheated and they hit with all the power of a nuclear weapon without all of that messy radiation. And there's a series of 50 of these in orbit, I believe. And so they've been put on alert now. Boom. When that happened, they're primed to fire. The only people that can stop the firing is a military squad that's in Chicago, but they only talk to each other they only accept incoming communications like every 4 weeks. These harpoons are going to launch in like 3 or 4 days, 6 days, 7 days, something like that. Obviously a really stupid freaking system, right? There's no way to... Hey, please push the button so it doesn't fire. No, I'm sorry, we can't. No, what? Wait, what? So, they pull in more people on the frequency. They find, and this is, they find someone who's trying to get into space outside of NASA, in this probably a prototypical Elon Musk type person. But his pilot launches, he gets launched because he's going to go up and stop it. And Miranda Zero takes a kill team in with the complete permission of the U.S. government, saying, they're like, crap. Okay, we'll help you however we can. Well, we're going to go in and clean these people out, okay, and stop it, because they have a button there that says "Do not launch." So they get, and Miranda Zero is annoyed that they put, a kill team basically in downtown Chicago with this, around all of these innocent civilians. One of her guys goes in and they bomb. They've set pressure plates on all the floors, and one of her team dies, and she's like, okay, enough of this. We're going to kill every one of these guys. We're going to stop this. But when they get in there, all the soldiers have already killed themselves, and they've screwed up the switch. You can't repair it in time.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves the astronaut, who's plan B. He's up there. He has to put an explosive on the first satellite in the chain, and it will disable it, because it's got a small charge on it that will blow up the computer or whatever. The only problem is it won't arm. So what he does is he's out there on a spacewalk, basically. He figures out a way to rig it so that he can get it the spark that it needs to fire, but it kills him too. He does that and saves Chicago, because that's where the first one was going to fire. And that's the end of the issue.
And the end of the series.
And the end of the series.
I'm just looking at this art, like I was just scrolling through some of the other issues, like you said, different artists each time. Like the Gene Haas stuff, like it's interesting because like I've seen Gene Haas art before, like Superman and stuff, and like it's different here. It's almost like a more photorealistic.
Going for hyper realism, right? And
yeah.
the coloring, I think, on this too is a bit more stylized, because it's a lot darker in places, and
it almost seems like each scene has like its own color, like up in space, it's almost like a greenish blue, and like when they in Chicago when they're going, it's like a reddish, yeah.
Yep. And I do want to call out Michael Heisler, I think, the letterer on this, because you see a lot of design work went into every one of these pages, because you see like text screens on the sides behind the panels and things, and it's got a really amazing design to it. So I mean, this is a team of comic creators that are all at the top of their game, just making great comics. I mean, honestly, because it's just a great issue. Now, if you wouldn't mind, go to that last page where the astronaut is.
Yes. Flip in. Yeah.
And before he blows himself up, and also that first satellite, he gives a little speech.
Mm-hmm.
Can you read that speech?
Yeah. Yeah, life goes fast, and we seem to spend most of it dancing around all these damn landmines left in the dirt. All this stuff left over from the last century that some bunch of bastards thought we didn't have the right to know about. It's like, Bert, you remember that crap we took from NASA just for wanting to go to space? Like they own the gate to the world? Screw them all. We'll do what we like, and we'll save our own lives and grow our own wings. And he's like, all of a sudden I can't think of anything funny to say as he blows himself up.
I love that speech.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think Warren Ellis was trying to say something.
We don't need anybody to save us. We can save ourselves. Screw them all. So yeah, this is a wonderful issue, and I really, I mean, I read it for the first time. Yeah, I guess when it came out. What was that? 2002? Maybe.
I was gonna say I had the thing up. There was no synopsis, but that was. Oh,
I may have it pulled up here.
Here we go. August 2004 was this issue.
2004.
Yeah.
Now, it started earlier. There were some delays, so this issue was late. But so almost 20 years ago, and this story is still stuck with me. Right? I mean, it's. I think it's really good. I think.
Well, again, it ages well too, because it's like, hey, the guys at the top suck. Well, so unfortunately, 20 years
they
later,
still do.
They
still do. But the series as a whole is is interesting. They fight this cyborg gone crazy in, I think, the second issue, who's powered by a nuclear engine or something. It's a very violent it's a very violent episode. I think Liam Sharp did the art on it, if I remember correctly. Shout out back to our Green Lantern podcast.
Yes.
There is a good one that I really like, and I think it's called Invasion. Maybe it's issue 3 or 4. I think it's in the first half. But Signal from Space starts making people act weird, kind of like flocks of birds. They become violent, and then it's Signal from Space, right? It's how it's kind of it's an alien invasion kind of story. And there's a person there that figures out that how it's being done, and she broadcasts a different signal, but she's also gay. And so she's able to save everybody, and at the end of it, she goes like, yeah, they'll be okay, and they all oh no, she's bisexual. She goes, but they all might be bisexual now at the end. So it's but the thing that was able to save all those people ultimately is love. So, I mean, it's a really positive, I mean, it's obviously violent as well, but it's a really kind of positive message, and it's a kind of a fun story. Let me look that one up real quick, because I think it's called Invasion. Let's see if that was issue 3.
But yeah, you kind of hooked me, because I was flipping through some of those issues and just looking at the art and everything, and I mean, it's piquing my interest here, so.
Let's see.
And again, only 12 issues, self-contained. Yeah, it's modern comics doesn't do a ton of this,
Exactly. I mean, it's and that was something that Ellis did a lot of. He would do a 4-issue series or a 6-issue series, and that was it, right? He would. I mean, there are so many series that are just 4-issue series. It's something that because he's a huge backlog. I mean, he's written a bunch of comics over the years. And let's see, sorry, it's not called Invasion, it's called Invasive. I think that's issue number 3, if I remember correctly. But it's got some, and the covers are all designed by what is his name? Brian Wood of Channel Zero, I think is what he did at the time. But it's for DC Wildstorm, but it's got a real vibe, at least from back then. What was kind of a Vertigo-esque approach, to comics, standard superhero comics at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that series. If I have to, and I don't know if one of these made the cut or not. I'd have to look at my list. But for me, the kind of the work that affected me the most that Ellis did is probably Planetary.
Okay.
Because it deals with a lot of things that I find really interesting. Because it's the very first issue of Planetary, you have analogs for all the pulp heroes. Doc Savage, you have Doc Bronze, you have the Spider, you have all of these characters that are trying to save the world, but then they build this computer, the Snowflake, that rotates through other realities, and a super team that realizes that their universe is about to be, it was created by the Snowflake, and then it was going to go away because they're figuring out how. It's the Silver Age Justice League, right?
Yeah.
Analogs for the Silver Age Justice League. And they go and they kill pulp heroes. So there's a lot of meta commentary here. The pulp heroes did die out because superheroes killed them, right? The villains of the series are called the Four, and they're literally the Fantastic Four. Okay. And there's this anger that Elijah Snow is he has these ice powers. But there's this anger because he goes. There's a quote where he says, "The things that these bastards have cost us since 1961," and the anger that Ellis is expressing is that superheroes literally killed off all of the other genres of comics. There's no more romance comics. There's no more cowboy comics. There's no more crime comics and all those things. So there's a huge amount of meta commentary along with this. Now, that's one way to look at what happened with superheroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Busiek has kind of a different opinion, and I lean more toward Kurt Busiek's interpretation in that superheroes didn't kill all these things off. Now, the Four in the series Planetary, they kill a lot of people and a lot of things, and they're really bad. But Kurt Busiek looks at it like this, is that superheroes didn't kill off those other things. The fans of superheroes were the only ones that cared enough to save superheroes. Mm. And the others did not, which is why they died off. Yeah. So I prefer that because I feel like that feels truer to me. But again, Planetary's build is archaeologists of the impossible. And they go around and look for stuff. I mean, there's a Tarzan analog. There's there's all of these different analogs. But it's in one issue, something is coming back to Earth and it's going to crash in Texas. It actually crashes where it started. It's like the Jules Verne book, From the Earth to the Moon. They made a big gun and they shot him. Well, this is the bullet coming back.
Oh, jeez.
And they find out because I don't want to ruin. There's a big surprise. The first mystery of the first 12 issues of Planetary is always a 4-person team. Okay, well, there's only 3 of them now. There's Elijah Snow, Chiquita Wagner, and the drummer. And they're like, who is the 4th man? Well, he funds all this. He's richer than Bill Gates, blah, blah, blah. We don't know who the 4th man is. So that's kind of the mystery of the first 12 issues. And then once that ends, and once you find out who the fourth man is, then that kicks off the second half, which is their war with the Four.
Oh.
Okay. And what happens? It ends in issue 26, and I don't want to spoil anything, but with the Four out of the way, things that were kept secret, all of these things that could help humanity, which were hoarded by the Four, the world is becoming a better place because the Four are gone. And in the final issue, we get how that impacts another issue. And in fact, what issue is it? It's before 12. Maybe it's 3, 4, 5. There's 2 really strong issues that stand out in my mind. The first one is they create a fictional universe, and then they send astronauts to it, and then they bring them back, and something else comes back, which was really kind of scary and deadly. But that really got to me thinking is, what if alternate realities? I mean, and it kind of really got me thinking and inspired Crossover Division when you get right down to it. The ability, these fictional worlds can become real enough to interact, right? So the other one is it's a story where they've taken kind of one of the Four's offices, Four Freedoms Plaza, extra building, whatever. And they're finding this stuff, and all of the stuff has little stories around it. You see a story, you see this blue lantern-y looking thing. It's because the Four killed the Green Lantern that came to that Earth, and they used it for something else. You see this little blanket, and that's where their Superman came, and they killed the Superman. It's where Wonder Woman, and they just nuked Themyscira from orbit. So, and that one's called Magic and Loss, and it's a really kind of a bittersweet issue because, again, these are the things that they took from us, right? And so, Planetary overall is a series that I keep going back to. I think I've got the absolute Planetary volumes right there. Yeah, there they are. It's only 26 issues. The art's by John Cassidy, who did Astonishing X-Men with Kevin Smith.
Yeah. No, Whedon, wasn't it Whedon?
Joss Whedon, you're right. Absolutely. Sorry, I messed that up. But Ellis waited for Cassidy so that it took a long time for this series to be completed, but the story is by Ellis. All of the art is by Cassidy. Now, there are, let's see, there's a crossover with JLA, where JLA are the bad guys in this other universe, and it's good. It's art by Jerry Ordway. There's a crossover with The Authority, with art by Phil Jimenez, I think. So it's Planetary, The Authority, Ruling Worlds, maybe? I can't remember what it was. And then there's one that I really, really love. It's Planetary Batman.
Oh, yeah, of course you do.
Batman, my favorite
I
character.
actually do. Ellis, and I think Cassidy does the art on that one too. But there's actually, so Planetaries goes to Gotham, okay, this Gotham City, and it turns out that in the Planetary universe, and they find out about this, there was Science City Zero where humans were experimented on, right? Well, the son, I think, of one of these experiments, he has the ability to kind of rotate the local area through the multiverse. You're in Gotham City. Boom, he's in Crime Alley. Okay. Dick Grayson actually appears in this. He's kind of a fanboy of the main Planetary team. But as he does this, as he rotates them through the multiverse, we get to see different versions of Batman, which is really, really interesting because we get a Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers version of Batman, from the 70s. We get a Frank Miller Dark Knight Batman.
Of course. Hold on. Yes, Frank Miller, kids.
Your mother's a whore!
That's it. A lot of Frank Miller stuff.
We get and the drummer who's on the team. It rotates again, and you get the you get the '60s Batman TV Batman. And drummer goes, "It looks like a transvestite hooker's running toward me at this point." And I think he even uses bat shark repellent. Anyway, but it's
yeah. I'm flipping through it right now. Yeah, they're all in the app. Yeah,
it's a really good story because at the end of it, because there's comedy in that, and but at the end of it, he brings it back home because his version and Cassidy's version of Batman is not, God Batman. He's like, look, he reaches out to this because this kid is essentially, he can't control what's going on to him. He's panicking, and that's the reason everything's going on. He just reaches out to him and says, "Hey, it's going to be all right." And I really, that compassionate version of Batman, I thought was really awesome. So, there's definitely lots of comedy because Chiquita, she's fighting one version of Batman, and then I think drummer turns around and he's running, and it changes, and he runs into the Batmobile, but now it's the giant Frank Miller Dark Knight Batmobile, and he gets knocked out. But it's a real, of all of the crossovers, that one is the strongest in my opinion, and it's really good. But yeah, if you could, Planetary as a whole, I think is his best work, at least in my opinion. But I do love Global Frequency a lot, the entire series, especially that final issue. But we should be angry and hopeful.
I may have to dive down a Warren Ellis rabbit hole one day because yes, all of this is on the app. The Authority, Planetary.
Now, Authority is interesting because he's working with Brian Hitch, and the story goes, and he writes about this in one of the introductions. He goes, he took over Stormwatch, and Stormwatch plays with a lot of the things that he would later use to, I think, much greater effect in Planetary. But you have older heroes. You have, Jenny Sparks. Was born on January 1st of 1900. And she's seen, the pulp era. There's one issue where we kind of go through her life and we see her in the pulp era. We see her in 60s comics, 70s comics, 80s comics, and then back to the present at that point, which was the 90s. And it ends on a really hopeful note with the character saying, look at the stars, which is pretty awesome. But he said that he was writing Stormwatch, and the numbers were pretty horrible on Stormwatch. And he asked him about it. He goes, oh yeah, it's okay. We really like reading it, so we're just going to keep publishing it. He said he felt really terrible about that. So because Stormwatch ended at 50 and then was relaunched for the second volume of Stormwatch, and I think lasted 12 issues. But it got him to thinking about how he could relaunch it as the Authority. And the Authority was, with Brian Hitch, was widescreen superheroes, right?
Yeah.
And you had this giant, this big which actually really, really influenced a lot of superhero comics that came after that. You know, that widescreen approach, you know, to big action. And the Authority is really cool because in the first 4 issues, that first arc, they fight a whole island nation of superpowered people. In the next arc, they fight a whole other Earth from a different Earth in the multiverse. And in the final arc that he does, the Authority would continue on without him. Mark Miller, I think, Mark Miller doesn't speak to me, but that's okay. He speaks to a lot of people. They kill God. It's a really interesting story. So, by God, there's this ancient entity. Looks kind of like a giant pyramid or whatever. But we weren't meant to be on Earth. The Earth is his retirement home. He's been out going around the universe. He left some things on the Earth to keep it the way he wants it. Lots of methane in the air, you know, and basically not for humanity or mammals or things like that. Well, the moon was ripped away from part of the Earth, and that's where a lot of his machinery was. Well, but he's getting close to coming back now. Also, it's near the turn of the century. Jenny Sparks is going to die and get reborn for the new century as Jenny Quantum. We don't know that, but that's about to happen. And so she's getting progressively weaker as things go. Everything on the moon activates and starts coming down, so the Authority has to stop all of that. And then God comes back, and they have to kill God to save the Earth. It's widescreen. It doesn't get much wider than that. But each arc, the threat level, steps up. Mm-hmm. Boom. And it's, gorgeous Brian Hitch art. It really, as a series, it was, I feel like it was so influential to a lot of stuff that came after it.
I mean, I was flipping through some of this stuff on the app while you're talking about it. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to have to dive down a deep rabbit hole one of these days from Warren Ellis.
Yeah, and I had a lot of, I enjoyed Transmetropolitan, but as a long form work, I think it's really good. But it seems there's still, a lot of his work is hopeful, about, things can change and the world can get better. But it gets a little too slapstick, I think, in some cases. It gets really serious toward the end. Yeah, whatever. And then I'm trying to think. Ocean, as a 6-issue series, was really good. It has Chris Sprouse doing the art, from the Legion of Superheroes, and Tom Strong, to bring it back to, last episode. But he's got a lot of really, really good and really important work out there. There are things that have come out about him within the last few years that disappoint me greatly. And it's hard to. You mentioned Joss Whedon, another creator that.
Unfortunately, talent doesn't always equate to a good person.
Yeah, it's hard to divorce the artist from the art sometimes, and that's the writer Kevin Joseph. He writes Tart and has written several other things. He and I talk about this a lot because Josh Whedon literally inspired him to write Tart, and Warren Ellis literally inspired me to do crossover divisions. So we're kind of like, so yeah, it's, and I don't necessarily want to get into one of my favorite series that I reread. I've started rereading every year is Green Lantern Rebirth. Mm-hmm. Jeff Johns has had things come out about him. The artist Ethan Van Sciver has had things come out about him. And that's a really important to me work, right? I love that. the fact that the creators are who they are is something that I have to keep, to consider now, which is.
I mean, it's a sad turn of events. I guess maybe just because of social media and everything, now we know more about the people who create our stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, just when I do an interview with someone and like they turn out to be a nice person, I'm just like, oh, thank God you're a nice person.
Yes. Yeah, and we've talked to a lot of really wonderful, awesome, nice creators, on Vector 2814, on the Wondercast. We had Jeff Johnson on. I mean, and it's so great. I mean, and I think most creators are really awesome people because they create this stuff and they want to share this with the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, I felt it was my responsibility to bring that up because if you don't want to support a creator, I can completely understand that. This was of course I'm conflicted about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's stuff that comes up more and more now because we have social media and, things do come up. And again, I mean, the last, however many, last 5-8 years, whatever, I mean, the politics and stuff has become hypercharged. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that, I could keep going on and on and on about all of how interrelated all this stuff is. If you want, you can find a cure for your insomnia, and you can go, search your local university library or library. You can actually download my dissertation if you want, or if
really,
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. The first half is really boring. Then I start talking about Quasar and Stormwatch and Authority and.
If you want, send me the link. I'll put it in the show notes for this episode.
Okay, I'm not sure.
If you can find it, send it to me.
I'll see if I can find a link because I know it's a digital version of it through my the University of Arkansas.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I do have to say one thing. I got a degree for writing about comics. I got a PhD for writing about comics, and I just have one thing to say about that: suckers.
Can I give you the degree about talking about comics a lot?
I do like talking about comics, and that was when I was teaching. I kind of had to step back from that so I can work on comics. There's not enough hours in the day, but this was like an intro to comics, like a 101, and it was great because typically my classes were split evenly, male female, which was awesome. But I didn't want to just focus on superhero comics, so I did, like 2 weeks on Alan Moore. I did Watchmen and V for Vendetta, and I actually prefer V for Vendetta because Watchmen is just so depressing.
No.
And then we did Transmetropolitan and Planetary, the first books of those for for Ellis. We did. I love All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison. It's just so awesome. That was in there. And just because I got to decide what was on the, syllabus, we did Walter Simonson's Thor. Because, heck yeah. Here's an 80s superhero comic. There you go. But we looked at, I think I had The Spirit on there. Concrete by Paul Chadwick.
Okay.
You can't not do Dark Knight Returns. I mean, you just have to. It's the book, right? We did Mouse, which won multiple awards and lots of people. We won a Pulitzer, Trying to think what else we did.
Is Mouse the one? Were they trying to ban that for a while?
Oh, probably. Because, well, it deals with mice are humans, or mice are humans, and then the cats are the Nazis, and it deals with
the Holocaust,
his experience of his father during the Holocaust. So I'm sure they've been trying to ban it a lot. But what else did we read? I'd have to look at my syllabus, but it was more writer focused. I mean, I know the art is important, and the art actually is probably more important than the writing because it is a visual medium. But in my mind, I wanted to look at, how these writers kind of approached it because, Alan Moore, we did Sandman. We did Dream Country, which I think is those 4 standalone issues that has Dream of a Thousand Cats, Calliope, which has the Element Girl. No, Calliope was the Muse. Element Girl was Masks. And then the Hugo Award-winning story, The Midsummer Night's Dream, which was by Charles Vess and Neil Gaiman. So I'm going to shut up now.
No, I find this interesting. Again, I hope you can share a link to that dissertation. I would love to watch that.
I will find that and I'll try to get it out to you. It's 200 pages it's about 70 pages of really boring text on the differences between modernism and postmodernism. It's not awesome. If you need help sleeping, that's a great place to start. Once I start talking about the books that Ellis did, we talk about continuity, we talk about the Omniverse, bringing Quasar, Mark Grunwald, and I had a lot of fun with that part. The first part I didn't have a lot of fun with because it's theoretical discussion about modernism and postmodernism and what that means and blah 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 and boring. But the other stuff's pretty cool. I'll see what I can find and get it to you.
And thank you, William. I thought this was just going to be an episode on one issue. I mean, this is basically the title of this episode is going to be "The Works of Warren Ellis." I mean, pretty much, yeah.
Oh, and how family friendly are we on this one?
Why?
You may have to beat me in a second.
Okay, that's fine. Lilith usually gets one in. No, go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know how many times it's happened, but they actually had to censor the title of my dissertation in the program when I walked to get my degree.
Oh my!
Because the title of my dissertation is let's see, what is it? I'm gonna have to look it up now. Dang it! It's crap. Oh, I can't. Okay, give me a second. I gotta.
If they had to censor a title or something of mine, I'd know exactly what that thing was called. I mean, we're like a badge of honor.
On. Horrible.
I'm very like, yeah, let's censor it, but yeah, what's it called? I don't know. He's an old man, children.
I am getting old. Oh, there we go. Okay, here you go. I'll send you the link for this in the chat in just a second. It's called Sublime Beauty and Horrible Fucking Things.
Wow!
The Finer Worlds of Warren Ellis. And that's actually a quote from him. That's actually a quote from him. It's a quote that Sublime Beauty, and yeah. So there you go. I used the F-bomb in the title of my dissertation. I mean, that's an apropos title, but I'm just like, that shocks me because I'm just like, kids, even offline, I don't get any, cursing from this Will Allred. That takes me by surprise. Like, who's writing this paper? Lilith in Hellfire? Jeez. There you go. It's funny. I every month I get a report from the university that says, this is how many people have downloaded it this month. Mm-hmm. And I think over the because this was back in 2011 when I submitted it and everything and got the degree. So like 790, almost 800 people have downloaded. I'm like, wow, I can't believe that.
Well, again, it's comics, Come on, come on. Come on, Will, you know this stuff. It's let's see, the abstract says, this constitutes an in-depth discussion of the muted postmodern characteristics of contemporary comics writer and novelist Warren Ellis, highlighting his major long-form works within comics, Planetary, Transmetropolitan, Stormwatch, and The Authority, as well as several shorter works such as Ocean, Orbiter, and Global Frequency. In addition, Ellis is situated within the British science fiction tradition, specifically the British Boom movement, which contains other comics writers such as Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore. That's the abstract. There you go. Nice.
You don't have to download it. I can just send you the PDF if you want a copy of it, dude. It's no big deal.
That's fine. After we're done, I'm going to look at that link. I'm going to put that link in the show notes.
But yeah, it's there's in my mind, a lot of people like to just dismiss comics because they think comics just mean superheroes, right? And I get that, but there's some really, really powerful works in comics, and specifically also in superhero comics. So, writer Amy Chu, she has a button or a hat or a sticker or something that says, "It's a medium, not a genre."
Mm.
It's a medium, not a genre. So we can tell all kinds of stories in comics. It's just that, superhero comics have dominated comics for a long time. And don't get me wrong, I love, to my core, deep down in my core, I love superhero comics. But comics aren't just superheroes. We can tell all kinds of, Crossover Division is not it's a science fiction comic.
Global Frequency. No one who knows comics, you put this out with, just as like a novel, like a text novel, no pictures. And people who don't know comics aren't going to know this is a comic book.
Exactly. And and comics, I think, are so powerful because, what we can do in comics as writers and artists and letterers and the whole team and colorists is, I feel like it's down to narrative density. You can take a novel and maybe it has to be 200 pages or 300 pages, but a lot of that is descriptive, right? Mm-hmm. But we get so much more information per page on a comics page than we do inside a novel, or even, sometimes minutes or of a movie. And I don't know. If I'm going to shut up, I promise.
No, keep going. No, I love this.
If anybody out there listening has not read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, you're doing yourself a disservice. He is both a practitioner and a theorist, and so much of what he talks about in Understanding Comics, it opens up a world of how comics do what they do, and how they, specifically how they differ. Movies, you're sitting there, it's experiential, stuff changes, you're just there, your eyeballs are taking it. But with comics, you build the narrative. Here's a picture. What happened between, gutter. He talks about blood in the gutter, which is a great chapter title. I love it. Because, you see this axe raised in one panel, and then the next panel you hear this scream. And it's like, I didn't kill that, as a writer, I didn't kill that character. You did, because you sequence, right? And that's the power, sequential art, the sequence. Understanding Comics is awesome. Scott McCloud's a genius. And
like I said, and like I always say, like comics are better than movies in my opinion, because it's like you don't have to worry about like a budget or anything. It's like, I want an armada of like 10,000 ships. I want them all to look different. And all you got to do, it's just that's down to your artist to be like, okay,
Yeah, exactly. There's the special effects budget is what can the artist stand to do, right?
I want a visual portrayal of the end of the universe. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay. I got you. There you go. We're gonna need a lot of colors on this one.
Pretty much, yeah. Or no colors.
Or no colors. It's gonna be a white page.
All right. Well, thank you, William. You gave me a lot to put on my reading list here.
Awesome. I hope you will enjoy them. You've got. I'm still working on that full checklist of the ABC comics for you. I'm almost finished.
Oh, yes, please. And all right. I'm going to give you a recommendation. I want your opinion. It's Lilith and I covered not too long ago. It's Daredevil 343. It's a fill-in issue by Ellis. And you could just tell, he has like you could tell he has an axe to grind with like, there's like police in like 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 different scenes, and they're all like corrupt. There's something with like a priest or someone who dressed like a priest. You could tell he has issues with like law enforcement and organized religion. Authority. And I just yes.
And there was a book called The Authority. Interesting.
Exactly.
He also wrote the Druid, Dr. Druid miniseries.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of that, this is a spoiler, it gets canceled, so he just basically has Druid killed, dumped in a trash can, and set on fire. And I'm like, whoa, that's that's not awesome.
Wow.
Exactly. He did write Doom 2099 for a bit.
Yeah.
He did a short little run on Thor. He did a quick arc on Wolverine. I've got a big list year by year of what he does inside the dissertation, but there's I feel like that there's a meanness maybe in a lot of his earlier work that gets kind of tempered with some of that angry hope, as he gets better at what he's doing. At least in my mind.
Because I know Lilith and I were joking around, but that Daredevil issue, we did say, like, yeah, he seems angry. Yeah. I think I even said, I'm like, did he write this on the worst day of his life? I'm like, what the hell,
There's another good series called Fell by him, which was a kind of a short. It was a shorter page count for a lower price, and had some back matter in it. But Ashley Wood was his artist on that, I think. He does love kind of detective fiction in general, so. Sherlock Holmes shows up in Planetary, for instance. So does Dracula, and I love what he does to Dracula. So there you go. I do prefer kind of that late '90s, early 2000s period. I think is when he was probably doing what I consider to be his strongest work in comics at that point. He's also written a couple of novels, and but yeah, there's a tremendous amount of work that he's put out over the last 30 years. I mean, there's a lot. He's done books for Image, for Wildstorm, for DC, for Marvel, for Avatar. There's just a tremendous amount of work.
Oh yeah, was that him on Dark? Was that Dark Avengers? Or no?
Yeah, I think it was him on Dark Avengers. And what was the Avengers book? Secret Avengers?
Oh, yeah, there was a Secret Avengers. Was that him? Yeah.
I think he did the first arc on maybe that one.
Oh, yeah, he did do that Doctor Strange in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. And there's some of this early stuff that I haven't... He did a run on Excalibur for a little bit in like a Pride and Wisdom miniseries, I think. I think Terry Dodson did the art. Oh, he also worked with George Perez on like Ultraverse Avengers, maybe like one of those giant crossover books, right?
Oh, he did Hellstorm, Prince of Lies, 12 through 21, and like in Druid 1 through 4.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, if you've been getting around comics for any length of time, I mean, I'm sure you've run into a Warren Ellis.
Probably, yeah. Absolutely, and like I said, the Planetary crossovers. He's working with Jerry Ordway. Who's been a mainstay on the Superman books for a long time. He worked with Brian Hitch. I think it was Brian. No, it was Phil Jimenez on Planetary Authority. I think that's Planetary Authority Ruling the World. They ended up crossing those two over and throwing in some H.P. Lovecraft as well, I think. But the Planetary Batman one, that one still, I really enjoy that one. That one's a really good issue.
And again, you're not usually the guy to beat the Batman drum either, so.
No, it's because that short 3 or 4 pages that their version of Batman appears in. It's like, it's not the Bat God that we talk about. This is a compassionate man that has suffered a tremendous loss, but he's used that to propel him forward to make sure nobody else suffers that loss that he suffered.
Yeah. And
it was a really great take. There's also a lot of comedy, with the 60s Batman and 60s TV show Batman and the drummer and all that. Yeah, and Planetary, in one of the books he talks about how he wants Planetary to be kind of different every issue. So the logo is going to change and get warped and be different because in the first issue, we're dealing with pulp heroes. In the second issue, we're dealing with something that's a John Woo film with, bad cops and stuff in, Taiwan or Japan. And then, you get an issue that deals with, 80s Vertigo comics, right? And, what that looks like. And then another one, you get, the history of the Four. And, that looks like it doesn't, they're not doing Passage of Kirby or anything like that, but, we're bringing in a lot of those influences, and it does change a lot. There's one issue where he's dealing with the Victorian kind of era, or post-Victorian era, like Sherlock Holmes and Dracula and those guys. So that book looks different on its cover, and you can probably take a look at some of the covers there, as you flip through it, just to see how things change.
Oh yeah,
right. And it's really interesting. I have a lot of love for Planetary. I really, really do, and I have a lot of love for Global Frequency to bring all the way back around. And now I shall shut up.
No, thank you for introducing it. Yes, I've heard these names over the year, well, especially Planetary and stuff. But yeah, I've been meaning to get this Warren Ellis stuff. So yeah, so might be a good opportunity. So, all right. Well, personally, I want to thank you, Mr. Will Allred, not only for today, but covering September for Lilith Hellfire, because yes, she will be back next week for Salty and Petty Kids. So.
Awesome.
But let's thank our unsung heroes of September. More than anybody, Will Allred and Justin. So takes a few men to replace Lilith Hellfire.
Well, we don't replace her. We just are temporarily there while she's gone.
Yes.
No one can replace her.
Exactly. All right. So yeah, kids. So. Yeah, again, if you want to get a hold of us, or if you have any other comics you want to hear Mr. Will Allred talk about, yeah, you can always email us, CapesandLunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And again, if you want, you can find all the episodes on all the various comics and pop culture stuff we talk about, links to our social media for all the shows, merchandise. Get yourself a Capes and Lunatics t-shirt right here. And of course, we have a Patreon, so please subscribe to the Patreon. You can find everything all in one place. That's tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. That's tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. And if you've just stumbled across this episode and now you are a huge fan of Mr. Will Allred, where can they find you on the social media? You don't check.
You can find me at Wallred. That's at WALLRED. If you'd like to, I mentioned Crossover Division. If you'd like to check out the comics that I write, Crossover Division, you can find that at crossoverdivision.com. Thank you, sir. And Diary of Night at diaryofnight.com. The 5th issue of Crossover Division, I'm hoping will launch in November, because we still the hardcover, which was funded a few months back, should be going to the printer shortly. So once that's fulfilled, we'll be launching number 5. You can also find me, Annoying Phil, every week on Sector 2814, the Green Lantern podcast, where we are currently in the midst of Sinestro Core War, which is pretty darn awesome. And finally, you obviously have pretty great taste because you're hanging out here with us. That means you probably love Marvel's Quasar almost as much as we do. And if you do and like to find out more, you can always go to the Quantum Zone at quantumzone.org.
Hey, boys, you look at the party? I love the party.
Seems like I'm getting a package every other day. They aren't even attempting to enter our orifices.
Dude, dissertation just on that issue. You can do dissertation just on Star Blast alone.
I can't believe that was printed in a Marvel comic.
I know. All right, kids. Again, thank you for joining us. And again, if you just stumbled across this episode, you can find Sector 2814 on, if you're listening on the podcast on this feed, or if you're watching this on YouTube, yes, it's on this YouTube channel every week. So, but yes, again, thank you, Will, for temporarily filling lid for Lilith Hellfire.
Thanks for having me and listening.